Welcome to the Stronger Than Steel podcast with your host, Austin Davidson and John Keir, talking Steelers all the time. Now, here's Austin and John.
Hello and welcome back to another edition of the Stronger Than Steel podcast. My name is John Keir, and joining me as always is my co-host, Austin Davidson.
Hello.
Welcome back to the show, Austin. It is currently early in the morning of February 22nd. The NFL season, the 2020 NFL season is officially over. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers have been crowned Super Bowl champions. I know we're a couple weeks behind here, but as we get back into the flow of things and get ready for the offseason, we of course have to put a bow on the 2020 NFL season with Super Bowl 55 and a game that was surprising in terms of the way it unfolded. I don't think many people expected not just a win for the Buccaneers, but a win in pretty dominant fashion throughout the course of that game, at least from the Buccaneers defense over the Kansas City Chiefs offense. Tom Brady wins his 7th Super Bowl championship, more than any franchise in the NFL. Bruce Arians, Antonio Brown, Super Bowl champions, while the Chiefs lose some of the luster that they were carrying into this game. And one of the more surprising results in Super Bowl history, one that saw the high-flying Kansas City Chiefs offense failed to score a touchdown, as they became just the 3rd Super Bowl participant in the game's history to not score a touchdown. Definitely would not have thought that going in.
Yeah, I bet some people made a ton of money betting on something like that, but overall it was a really weird Super Bowl for that reason. Huge win for the stats of defensive NEA and turnovers in the regular season, because it had the Buccaneers basically going all the way the entire time, and I can't say the entire time. There are other teams qualifying, but once it got down to Tampa Bay versus Kansas City, it was on paper that Buccaneers would win, and they pulled through. So huge win for those stats being a telltale sign. Other than that, the game was pretty boring. Obviously, they blew the Buccaneers out, and it's the first time that Patrick Mahomes has lost by more than a touchdown since he was in college, and he lost to Iowa by more than a touchdown. It's been that long.
Yeah, that's certainly pretty wild, and you think about the way this game unfolded. The Buccaneers offense wasn't overly explosive on the day. They put up their numbers. They did enough to get the job done. It was all about their defense and what they did to Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs offense. And a lot's been made about that extremely makeshift offensive line, and it was not very good. Andrew Wiley, who was the starting right tackle, gave up a ton of pressures in that game. It felt like Patrick Mahomes was running for his life early and often in that game, but Mahomes also didn't do himself many favors with the way he was running into pressure too. And, the Chiefs continuously used 5- and 6-man protections in the game and didn't do much to help his struggling quarterback. So just all around bad for the Chiefs on offense. You kept waiting for them to finally break out like they had so many times over the past couple of years, but losing in the fashion that they did, it kind of makes you wonder now going forward just how strong this team is going to be. Coming off the Super Bowl, they had the opportunity to become only the 2nd team since the turn of the century to repeat as Super Bowl champions. And I think some of the shine has come off their team. They've lost a bit of their luster after losing this game, and maybe they don't seem quite as invincible now that they've lost in this game. It makes you wonder how the next handful of years is going to go for them, because I think even though it's one game, you could make an argument that it's going to be tougher sledding for them now that they haven't been able to pull off back-to-back championships.
Yeah, I really wonder if they regret the Clyde Edwards-Helaire pick when they could have literally gone anywhere else, and it probably would have helped them if they got a wide receiver, if they got an offensive lineman. They desperately needed an offensive lineman in that game. They're going to go through. We're gonna have to see how they compete with the team they got. They have no cap space left, obviously, after signing Chris Jones, Tyreek Hill, Patrick Mahomes, all that. I'm sure they're gonna cut Sammy Watkins. Watkins really can't exist on that team. I can't imagine it, but It'll be interesting to see how they handle themselves going forward. I'm sure they'll still be a very good team. But they did lose some of that luster, like you said, and they really need to rebuild the offensive line.
And it makes you wonder.
Healthy.
And it makes you wonder because throughout the season when the Steelers were 11-0 and they had all their flaws, and everyone could see that they had their issues. Remember, the Chiefs only won one of their last 7 regular season games by more than one score. They were playing with fire all year, and they were very good in the playoffs up until the Super Bowl. However, that being said, maybe their issues, like the Steelers, were more telling of a symptom of a disease, but not really the maybe they weren't as strong as maybe they appeared, just because they were the champions and they had only lost a couple times in the past couple years.
Yeah, well said. It kind of did look like that they were going to come down eventually, though. Like with that ending of the regular season, it looked like they were going to be knocked off at some point. Kind of surprised they made it to the Super Bowl. I'll be real with you.
Yeah, I like the Bills, frankly, to beat them, but the way they won that game kind of, made you think, oh, they'll probably win the Super Bowl. But the Buccaneers, give them credit, give Bruce Arians, Tom Brady, the whole team a ton of credit, because this is a team that the Chiefs nearly boat raced. What was it? 1 quarter into their game in the regular season, Tyreek Hill had 200 receiving yards in a quarter. And the Buccaneers made that a game, and basically ever since the Chiefs jumped out to that big lead in that game, the Buccaneers outscored them something like, 50-something to 9 or 50-something to 12. Like, it's impressive, and a lot of that team is going to be coming back next year. And if you'll remember, a lot of their issues that they had this year, you'd have to think were due to chemistry issues, and that just makes it even more impressive that they did all this without practically any training camp and no preseason. This is going to be an even more dangerous team next year with no Drew Brees in the fold for the Saints, too, a team that's in cap hell as well. So you have to think that this Buccaneers team is going to have a great shot to make another run in the playoffs next year, too.
Yeah, all they need is decent quarterback play throughout the year, and they'll be pretty solid. I mean, back Godwin and Levante David, and they're in business.
Any thoughts as far as Tom Brady and his legacy?
No, but I mean, if everyone didn't think he was the greatest of all time already, like, he is the greatest of all time. He just went to a new team, and granted, I know. They just needed a quarterback, but, he went to a new team, new coach, almost knew everything. He got his tight end back, and was able to win it with another team in their first year. I find that to be impressive, and I think that just secures his status as the greatest quarterback of all time.
Not to mention, in the championship, they defeated the previous champions. I mean, and look at the teams that they beat and the quarterbacks that they beat along the way, besides Taylor Heineke, who, ironically enough, played the best of that group of 4.
I was going to say that.
Yeah, I mean, Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, all future Hall of Famers, and, it's just incredible. And, you don't have to like the guy. I've hated him for a long time. But, to suggest anything other than the fact that he is the greatest is just kind of ridiculous at this point. There's no real good argument, because I've learned over the course of time that you can kind of cherry pick things and you can dissect things, pick things apart. People do it with Ben Roethlisberger all the time. And I'm sure you've seen some of the tweets, Austin. People will cherry pick things about anybody, like the Steelers, all their Super Bowl wins, like something about them, like, oh, it was against a team that never, wins in the playoffs, blah, blah, blah. But, things don't happen this many times on accident, And
it's hard to win a Super Bowl in the NFL. It's not easy.
It's hard to get there, and he's been to 10.
Yeah.
So, I mean, who cares? And you know what? If he was, assuming he's part of the greatest team of all time in terms of the way it was constructed with Belichick and whatnot, he still had to play and execute. It's not like he just had a free pass. He wasn't the backup quarterback sitting there with a clipboard the whole time. So, I mean, you can have your criticisms, and that's fair, but at the same time, you have to be able to acknowledge what he's done, because it's silly to act as though what he's done is not extremely significant. This is a team that, other than their run in 2002, had been largely a joke of a franchise. I mean, they hadn't been to the playoffs since 2007. And everyone knows their inaugural season, they went 0-14. I think they went their first 26 something games before they won a single game. Besides that previous championship run, this team was largely an afterthought. And now they're legitimate, and maybe they won't be when Brady leaves or retires, whenever that may be. 10 years down the line, but it's just impressive. And I've gone from just hating it and wanting it to end to just appreciating it. Although I will still say I think he should just leave, just because I think it would be good for the game. But now it's just time to just sit back and appreciate what you're watching, because I can't for the life of me imagine we're going to see it again.
Yeah, kind of off topic, but you reminded me of it by talking about how Tampa Bay has been kind of irrelevant for years. Shout out to the NFL salary cap for having the AFC and NFC championship games be in the markets of Buffalo, Kansas City, Tampa Bay, and Green Bay. Like that, if it wasn't for the salary cap, that would never happen. We'd never see teams like that, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a fantastic thing for the sport, and it's something that other sports, and when I say other sports, I mean one sport in particular that is the only major sport left that doesn't have a salary cap. But in any case, yeah, I think it's a wonderful thing for the sport, and obviously for the communities too. So definitely an interesting season, one with a whole bunch of COVID issues, but the NFL pulled it off, and I don't know if we should be necessarily praising them, considering the way that they just kind of plowed through stuff and the way they handled some situations like the Broncos as opposed to the Ravens. But nevertheless, another full season is in the books, and besides the preseason games that were cut, they got all the regular season games in, and they got an extended playoff in.
Yeah, pretty good overall.
All right. So with that in mind, let's turn our attention to an off-season primer for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Some news to discuss. First and foremost, we have to talk about the retirement of longtime center Maurkice Pouncey. After 11 NFL seasons, Pouncey has called it quits. We thought there was a chance Ben Roethlisberger was going to talk him back into going for it one last time, but after Mike Pouncey apparently made the decision to retire due to his injuries, his twin brother Maurkice followed in his footsteps. Can't really say I'm surprised, because you figure, twins, when one goes, the other would too. That was the case with Pouncey, who a 9-time Pro Bowler in his 11 seasons. The only 2 seasons he didn't make the Pro Bowl, which, you can say whatever you want about the Pro Bowl, Austin. And I think it's fair to criticize the fact that Pouncey made it this year, but the 2 years Pouncey didn't make it, he played a total of 8 regular season snaps between those 2 seasons. I mean, the guy, every year he played, was basically a lock to make the Pro Bowl.
Yeah, he was one of the leagues. He was considered one of the league's best. I voted it year after year.
Not to mention a 5-time All-Pro, and it's tough to grade the play of offensive linemen, but centers have been a position that the Pittsburgh Steelers have generally had, if not the best, one of the best centers in the NFL, going all the way back to the mid to late 60s with Ray Mansfield, a Hall of Famer, and Mike Webster, one of the best centers ever. Another Hall of Famer, Dermontti Dawson, Jeff Harding's a Pro Bowler, and then a couple of years later, Maurkice Pouncey entering the scene. As far as what you've seen with Pouncey and the way that he's played, do you think that he's worthy of the Hall of Fame? Do you think he'll get in, and how long do you think it would take for him to?
After it took so long for Faneca to get in, I said yes at first. I was like, yeah, Maurkice Pouncey's probably going to make it, because, he made it the Pro Bowl, and every year he played that he wasn't injured, as we just went over, and he has a couple All-Pros under his belt. And then I compared it to Faneca, and I'm just like, that's really tough, because Faneca's much more All-Pro, has a Super Bowl win under his belt. He had this I think he had one less Pro Bowl. I think he had 8 Pro Bowls to Maurkice Pouncey's 9, but again, he had Pouncey beat out in the All-Pro regard, and we just saw how long it took him to get in. I don't think Pouncey's going to get in anymore. It's going to be tough. I think that I'm not going to say he's never going to get in. There's a chance, and honestly, it might be a better chance than Hines Ward due to the market of wide receiver. But it's still not likely. I don't think so. Maybe eventually, though. We'll see. What do you think?
I think that he will. It's just going to take some time. I think that he has a better chance than Ward, and when it comes down to it, I think Pouncey is right around the top 10 of centers of all time, at least when he was in his prime. I mean, he was the most athletic center I've ever seen. The way that he could get out there on lead blocks, he could pull, he could help tackles out when needed to, and he was an imposing guy, at least early on in his career. I know at the end he hasn't been quite as good, but he was still a serviceable player right up until his last season. Unfortunately, his last game will forever be marred by that awful snap that led to the avalanche that was the start of that playoff game. But, I mean, I think he has a chance. I think it'll take some time. I don't know what my rankings would be, but I feel like Marquise Pouncey, if not a top 10 center, is right on the fringe of top 10 centers of all time.
I think that's a fair assessment. I'd have to go back and look, though. I won't lie to you. Center is not a position I'm super familiar with other teams. So I think that he could be up there. I definitely have to go back and look.
Just because he's maybe not as great as Mike Webster and Dermontti Dawson doesn't necessarily mean that he's not a Hall of Famer, by the way. The Steelers just happen to have some of the best centers of all time that played for them as well. I mean, they've had 3 Hall of Fame worthy players since 1974, and not to mention they've had 2 other Pro Bowl centers in Ray Mansfield and Jeff Hardings play for them for a number of years too. So that's quite a good thing to have, a good problem to have if you're the Steelers. So we'll obviously keep our eye out for Pouncey, but the Steelers' offensive line takes a big hit, one that struggled a lot this year, and the leadership in the locker room takes a big hit. It's going to be pretty hard going forward to replace what he brought to that team. But obviously the Steelers are going to have to try to do something and do something soon. But on the plus side, it does help with the Steelers' upcoming difficulties they look likely to have with the salary cap. So I guess there is a silver lining as far as that goes.
That saves them a good amount and helps them get a little bit more compliant, but they're not even there yet. They still got I think $26 million to go.
Yeah, so why don't we transition to that with the salary cap while we're thinking about it. So we know now that the salary cap minimum is going to be at least, $180 million? It's going to be at least $5 million more than the 175 that it was, worst case scenario, doom and gloom. So that much is good. As far as where the cap is going to be, we still are not yet sure, because the NFL is in the process of negotiating its new TV deals. So until then, I imagine we're not going to hear much.
Yeah, it's a whole crapshoot on what the actual salary cap is going to be. Some people say it's going to come in way higher, like at 195. Some people say only 2 more million, 3 more million. We're going to find out when we find out. That's literally how it's going to be. Everything else is just crapshoot and guessing.
Obviously, if they could get it up to 185, anything else beyond that would be gravy. I mean, if it somehow comes in at 198.2 or whatever it is, that would be awesome. But I think if you're rooting hard for 185, and if you can get anything more than that, it's gravy. The Steelers are going to lose some of these free agents, but you might be able to keep 1 or 2 key guys if the cap number is that high. So something to look out for. There have been several coaching changes with the Steelers. They've hired Grady Brown to be the new secondary coach after Tom Bradley was not brought back. Brown was most recently the cornerbacks coach at the University of Houston, but he was also the defensive coordinator at McNeese State and a co-defensive coordinator and defensive backs coach at Old Dominion. Also coached at Louisville and was also at South Carolina for 3 seasons prior to being hired. Coach with no prior coaching experience in the NFL. And they also promoted assistant offensive line coach Adrian Clem to the offensive line coaching position. A former second-round pick by the New England Patriots in 2000. He was part of 3 Super Bowl winning teams for the Patriots in that decade. And and he went on to coach at the college ranks before most recently being a coaching intern with the Patriots, and he also coached at SMU and UCLA. So he has a past in coaching as well. And the Steelers also have apparently, according to rumors, have had their ear on the names of guys like Aaron Jones and J.J. Watt as far as potential free agents. So I don't know if you want to discuss each of those individually or if you have thoughts on both of them that you wanted to group together.
Well, I found it funny that the Steelers were doing their due diligence on Aaron Jones. I really hope that they don't find the money to do. I don't think they're going to find the money to do that, but I hope they don't do that. And the J.J. Watt bit does sound it's interesting, but I hope the Steelers also don't go that route. He would have to play defensive tackle for the Steelers. He would have to come in for a vet minimum deal, which he's going to get more than that. There's literally 12 other teams interested in him, which as they should be. And it's fun, it really is, but it's not what the Steelers should be doing at all. They should not be putting their money into that. If they're going to put their money anywhere, they got to put it into offensive line or pay their quarterbacks or something like that. J.J. Watt would be a fun signing, but it's not something for a team like the Steelers that they should do. I just hope he doesn't go to the Cleveland Browns, where the Browns are apparently serious contenders.
Yeah, Watt would be the definition of a luxury signing. And would you like to have a player like that? Of course you would. But the Steelers have, like you said, far more needs at other important positions. Like, could J.J. Watt play, right guard or left guard or whatever? So could he play center? He'd be a lot more helpful there for the Steelers. But, unless if he came in playing at the veteran minimum, I would not expect him to be really considered at all for the Steelers, and I don't imagine he'd be playing for the vet minimum. I don't know why he'd want to play for the vet minimum. You don't get a lot of opportunities to make money in the NFL, and as far as Watt goes, even though he's made a lot, this is probably going to be the last opportunity he has to make decent money in the NFL. So even though I'm sure he loves his brothers, I would not expect him to want to take that chance to play on the vet minimum deal. Now, as far as Aaron Jones goes, I have similar thoughts. I'd love to have a guy like Aaron Jones playing for the Steelers just because of how bad the Steelers running backs have been, and he was a productive guy in Green Bay. That being said, how much money is he going to command per year, Austin? Like $5-6 million?
Aaron Jones?
I'm saying bare minimum. That's how much he's going to...
I'm... Okay. You know what? In a COVID year, I think the minimum he would have is 6. But like in a normal year, the minimum he's taking is like 8.5.
Yeah, I'm saying like bare minimum. I think that's like extreme low end.
Yeah. 100%.
This is a guy that scored what, like 16 touchdowns? Not this year, but the year before?
Yeah, he showed he could keep it up. I really was skeptical of him after 2 years ago. It's like, he's probably just a one-hit wonder that just came off like Ty Montgomery, who was also a one-year wonder. And I was like, I don't really believe him. And then this year he came in and probably played stronger. He's a really good back.
Over the Cap has valued him at roughly $9.3 million. So, yeah, that's... look, I like the player. I would not want to sign him for that, especially given the Steelers' concerns. I understand the need to upgrade at the position, but unless if Jones is playing for half of that, I probably wouldn't do it.
Yeah, no. Steelers don't have the luxury like that, and it's never a good thing to pay a running back.
Unless if... my one exception would be like if it's a 1 or 2 year deal, but this is I just don't see why Jones would want to do something like that. You're really just harming your own ability to make money at that point.
He wants to get paid.
Exactly. So let's see here. Was there anything else regarding the cap you wanted to mention?
No, I think that was it.
So depending on where the cap comes in order to get cap compliant, the Steelers are going to have to make a number of moves here. Some guys in a cut or keep game, obviously one of those names, and Marquise Pouncey can be removed since he retired. Guys like Derek Watt, Vince Williams, David DeCastro, and Joe Hayden are names that have been floated out there as potential cap casualties. I wanted to go over them each individually and kind of your thoughts on it. Let's start with Derek Watt, the fullback. Not making a ton of money, but you can save I think a little over $1 million by cutting him. Would you give strong consideration to letting him go?
I personally would, but I don't think he's a guy the Steelers are going to cut. I just think that the Steelers underutilize the fullback position. I feel like they should just get away from having a full. If they want to keep Derek Watt, they should use him. I don't. This is obviously not what's going to happen. They're going to do whatever they want to do. They do not use him enough to justify paying him as much as he is. And it's not that he's a bad player. It's not even close to that. He was injured this year, but that's not his fault. And other than that, he actually is a good player, but the Steelers didn't let him. He actually was like one of the most versatile fullbacks there is, like with juice check and stuff. He's caught passes from Rivers and stuff. Like he belonged on the field more than not. He didn't deserve to be on the field more than Eric Ebron, but he needed to eat into Eric Ebron's snaps a little bit more to get on the field, and the Steelers refused. I would personally cut him. I would like the Steelers to get away from using the fullback, having a fullback, because they don't need it. They don't use it. And that hurts me a little bit because I really love the fullback position, but it is what it is. I would personally cut Derek Watt if it was up to me.
Yeah, the way they use that position is more as a special teams player that, it's a perk if they can play offense, and he can. But like you said, the way they use him would be you might as well just get a tight end to play fullback and then just replace his special teams ability with another linebacker like Ulysses Gilbert. I wonder if they're going to target a guy like Ben Mason, who's a fullback in the draft, and then cut Watt because, it's a much cheaper deal, fullback on a rookie contract, than someone like Watt.
Yeah, that would be a huge mistake. I think Watt stays, though. I didn't realize it, but one year when Derek Watt was at Wisconsin, the offensive coordinator was Matt Canada. I did not realize that, and that connection is likely. I thought he already was going to stay, but I mean that connection is probably going to be enough too because, Canada was already his offensive coordinator, so I think that Watt is going to be on the team.
Do you think he stands to benefit much from a potential change in the offense here?
I hope so. I hope Canada brings it something where the fullback is used a little bit more.
All right, what about Vince Williams?
Vince Williams, I do think that he is going to be cut. You have Robert Spillane, who basically has shown that he plays like the same exact way. He could be that guy if you need to, and he's much cheaper option, much cheaper. So in a normal year, I probably wouldn't cut Vince because his leadership and presence is he's just been so great for the Steelers for so long. I think this year you have to get cap compliant. I think you have to. I think in a normal year you could probably trade him because every other team is also trying to get cap compliant in this bad year. I don't think there'll be any takers this year, but I think that you do have to move on from Vince Williams because he hasn't never really been able to wear the green dot either. So it's there's something wrong with that. There's something to say about that he can't really lead the defense if it's necessary. So I think that the team will cut Vince Williams.
Well, what's weird is that in a normal year you don't have to cut him. It's a cap crunch like this that those middle tier players like Vince Williams really they're the ones that suffer the most because the cheap guys are on the cheap deals and the expensive guys make too much money to be cut. So if I'm circling one guy right now, Vince Williams is that guy that I think could get cut. You have to be careful with paying guys that are maybe specialists like Vince Williams, who's a great blitzer, a great pass rusher, a solid run defender, but struggles in space. You don't want to pay those guys too much and for too long, but his contract in general is fine, but in a cap crunch like this, I think that he might be in trouble.
Yeah, it's going to be tough for him.
Couple of long shots. How about David DeCastro and Joe Hayden?
Both are keeps because you have no depth at either position. I mean, you know what's funny? I was thinking about David Castro is definite. There's no changing David DeCastro in my mind. But Joe Hayden, there's a higher chance he could get cut if it means saving the other two cornerbacks, which I don't think that happens. But if cutting Joe Hayden was the difference between having him or Cameron Sutton and Mike Hilton, I would, but I don't think it is. It's not enough. And for that being said, I think you got to keep Joe Hayden because your cornerback depth is really rough without it. I mean, it's Steven Nelson, and you hope that you get either Cameron Sutton or Mike Hilton back. But for now, and until I see her cornerback depth, Joe Hayden is pretty safe.
I think the only reason you cut Hayden is if you know you can re-sign both Hilton and Sutton.
Exactly.
Frankly, I think it's just a case of robbing Jimmy to pay Paul, if that makes sense.
Sorry, say that again?
Robbing Jimmy to pay Paul. It's a saying where you basically take one guy's money and just give it to someone else.
I had never heard that before. I was like, I thought I was having a stroke.
No. But, like, for instance, if you're cutting Joe Hayden, you're just going to end up paying Cameron Sutton, and there's a chance you could just end up having a situation where it's Nelson and Sutton are your starters, whereas before it could have been Nelson and Hayden. And does that make much of a difference? Probably not. I don't know that you can definitely say your cornerback room is better for having done that.
Yeah, it would be hard to tell. I don't have to play that much.
Alrighty. In terms of positional need, we're going to be doing things on a tier basis this year. We're going to go from high to medium to low in terms of our episodes. We're going to do a high position of need, medium, then low, and then back to high in terms of the way we grouped our positions. So we determined in the high tier need, we have both interior offensive line and tackles, tight ends, and running backs. So high needs in terms of the offense, and I don't really know that that's necessarily surprising. Which position, in your opinion, sticks out the most as the most important?
I view offensive tackle as the most important. I feel like an offensive tackle is going to be necessary for the team. I think that they would help with their run game to get a really strong offensive tackle to help them. But you could definitely make the argument for interior because you actually literally don't have a center. Meanwhile, you probably do have two tackles that you can start.
Medium, we have quarterback, edge defenders, and linebackers. And then last we have the specialists, receivers, safeties, and interior defensive linemen. Let's go over the Steelers free agents. We're going to start with the exclusive rights free agents. There's three of them: Marcus Allen, J.C. Hassenauer, and Robert Spillane. I think that all three of them will come back easy, no problem. There's no reason to not bring those guys back on those cheap deals.
I think there's a chance JC doesn't come back. The Steelers might have a shot at getting BJ Finney back. I think if they get that shot, they won't need Hassenauer. So, but all the other two, I think, are definite. And I think that Hassenauer is going to come back.
I would have agreed with you if Pouncey hadn't retired, but the fact that he has, I think Hassenauer is the only center on the roster. The only true center, that is.
That's fair.
We have two restricted free agents in Ola Adeni and Ray McLeod.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure both those guys are going to be back too. No edge depth, and Ray McLeod is probably the best returner we've had in years. And he did contribute a little bit on offense. And with Juju Smith-Schuster likely departing, I think that Ray McLeod will make it. Adeni might not. There's a chance because I feel like the team doesn't really love Adeni in the same way I have. And I feel like they can replace. They probably feel like they can replace him with another undrafted free agent guy or someone else or a low tier guy. I really like his special teams ability though. He played really well on special teams this year.
He was their best special teams player according to PFF. I think that Adeni will get brought back, just not on the original round tender. I think he comes for a little bit closer to the vet minimum. Meanwhile, I think McLeod might get tendered just because of the opening on the offense where he could see more playing time and because of his usefulness, though I wouldn't be surprised either if he doesn't get tendered as well. As far as the unrestricted free agents go, there's a handful of them. So I think we're gonna play a quick game of yes or no. Are they going to be back? And feel free to add context if you want, but I think some of them you don't need. So we're going to start with Bud Dupree. He's gone.
On.
Alejandro Villanueva.
On.
I think he might retire, but if he plays, it's not going to be in Pittsburgh next season. Avery Williamson.
Maybe. It depends on how cheap of a deal he is. Probably not, though. Probably gone.
I have to think some team will give him more than the vet minimum.
Yeah. Bills, probably. He could go straight to the Bills.
Indeed, they need a linebacker. Matt Filer.
Been back and forth with this one because I feel like the Steelers might benefit from moving him back to tackle if they wanted to keep him, and his flexibility is pretty good. I am going to go out on a limb and say they do end up keeping him to address some of their offensive line issues going into this year, even though it wouldn't really be fixing anything because it would be bringing back a player that was on there last year, but at least for depth purposes is a good thing. I say keep.
I would like to know, I'm very similar in terms of my thoughts. I'd like to know how much money he could command on the open market. I got a funny feeling he will be coming back, though. But I would rather see him at right tackle than at left guard like we saw this season. He was much better at tackle last year.
Yeah.
Cornerback Mike Hilton.
On.
A lot is dependent on the salary cap, but if I had to choose now, I would say gone. Tyson Alualu.
I say returning.
I think he comes...
I think that
Go ahead.
I think his deal is going to be pretty cheap. I feel like, even though he just played like his best season ever, I think that he's still going to come back on a cheap contract because I feel like how much more money is he going to get at the age he's at on the free market just because he played a really great season? I think that he's going to come in at like another $3 million deal, if not less. I think to play in Pittsburgh, I think he comes back.
He played nose tackle, and he's going to be, 34, 35? I think you can get him on a 1, maybe 2-year deal, and then after that, his career is either over or you can shake hands. So I think he comes back. Zach Banner, I think it's pretty clear he's going to be coming back based on the chatter we've heard.
I know we'll be returning. Yes, sir.
Juju Smith-Schuster.
Nope.
Yeah, I don't think so. The cap would have to come in close to 198 for that to happen, I think. So I won't say it's impossible, but I'm not holding my breath. Cassius Marsh, the edge defender.
I'm going to go yes. I think that they're going to keep him because, it's cheap. They're going to have some players at depth at edge. I say yes.
Bring him to training camp on the minimum. Same with J-Ron Elliott, in my opinion, who's also an unrestricted free agent.
Yeah, at least come into training camp. That's for sure.
Jordan Berry.
I say no. I feel like if he was coming back, we would have known by now because he wasn't going to come back on an amazing deal. I feel like if he was, we would know. So I'm saying no. I think where this team is going to go with Carlos Waitman or another undrafted free agent punter or a late round punter.
Boy, it would kind of suck to lose Barry now after finally getting basically a full season out of him and a really good season out of that. It's been a while since the Steelers have had a really good punter. Besides the 3 games at the end of the 2019 season, he's been almost a top 10 punter in the league.
Yeah.
Chris Wormley.
Tough one. I think so. I think they're going to cut one of their younger guys to keep him. I think because it's going to be a cheap deal. I think they're going to get rid of. Isaiah Buggs likely. I don't think they want to hold on to him much longer. I know it's not saving much money, but I don't think that Wormley is going to be very expensive. I think they're going to want that depth there. So I'm going to say keep.
Yeah, he played very well when he came back from injury this year.
And he could go back to the Ravens, though. There's a chance.
If Alualu does not come back, you'd have to think that Wormley does come back. The Steelers will make it a priority to get him. At least one of those two guys will be back.
Yeah.
Jordan Dangerfield.
I think he returns. I think they made him a special teams captain this past year. I think he makes his return. You definitely need safety depth, so I think he returns.
It would definitely be tough to stomach losing him as well, so I think he does come back. Danny Isadora, I think vet minimum. Vet minimum, you can come back, otherwise goodbye.
I think he's gone. I think he goes back to Kansas City. Not at Kansas City, to Miami.
Sean Davis?
Gone.
Yeah. I imagine he'll get one other shot. You can offer him a trip back to training camp, but nothing guaranteed outside of that. Cam Sutton, this is a very interesting one to me. I think that of all the free agents, I think he's the big-time free agent the Steelers will try to keep, and I would love to have him back.
I would love to have him back too, but I think he is gone.
James Conner, based on Art Rooney's comments, it's pretty clear he will not be coming back.
It does not seem that they want him. Unfortunate. He probably wanted to stay in Pittsburgh for his career. It would have been legendary, but it's not right. I hope he has a great career somewhere else. I'm rooting for him. He's gone.
Gerald Hawkins.
I would like him back. I liked him at swing tackle, but I think he's gone. There's so many teams that need offensive linemen, and I'm literally surprised the Texans never put him onto their active roster. He's literally better than anyone on their offensive line right now, besides Laramie Tunsil. I take that back. Besides Laramie Tunsil. But, I think that he is going to actually have a team that wants him more than the Steelers do.
Definitely offer him a chance to come back to camp, but outside of
I like that.
Yeah, exactly. Joshua Dobbs, I think he's on his way out with Dwayne Haskins coming in.
Yeah, Dobbs is likely gone. Could come back to camp though. We'll see. But, the Jaguars didn't want him, and their quarterback situation was garbage. So, maybe he sticks around. I wouldn't mind him on the practice squad at all. He's a good Lamar Jackson practice.
And that covers all the unrestricted free agents, so obviously we'll see relatively soon here. Austin, I took the liberty of coming up with a list of a bunch of different players as far as free agents and including one restricted free agent. Were any of the names that I listed here interesting to you?
So it's kind of a small name, but it's someone that has been talked about going to the Steelers for a long time. That's tight end Anthony Auclair from Tampa Bay. He's a guy that is a really good blocker. He's not anything crazy. He's not going to be a receiving threat or anything like that. But I feel like the Steelers could do with a true blocking tight end that's really good, like a David Johnson, basically a fullback. But I think Anthony Auclair would be a great signing. I'm pretty sure he'd be veteran minimum. I don't think he's going to get more than that. That's someone that stuck out to me personally. Then. What's it called? No, honestly, I think that was it. I think that was the only one. I thought I had another one, but maybe we'll get back to it. How about you?
Well, Luke Wilson is always interesting from the tight end perspective, just as a blocker. I wonder if the Steelers will look at that. Another guy is Ricky Seals-Jones, who's going to be a free agent. The Steelers tried claiming him a couple years ago off of waivers, but were unable to get him. There's a few names, former Steelers, that are going to be free agents. Artie Burns, obviously, depending on what's going on with the Steelers' cornerback room. I don't imagine he'll get recycled, but you never know. And so is Daniel McCullers. A couple of names I wanted to throw out there. Sidney Jones was a guy I loved coming out of the draft. Had an injury-riddled time in Philadelphia, but had a nice kind of career revival with the Jaguars last year. There's some interesting names on here. I think that we should take some time looking at some of these perhaps sometime once the free agency market opens, because I listed 51 guys. I imagine that the Steelers will be in on at least a couple of them, but in any case...
The other one I was thinking of was Marlon Mack. I like Marlon Mack coming off an injury year. He's probably going to be really cheap. And I really liked him in Indianapolis. I truly, from when I first saw him, I thought he could be a feature back, and the Colts never made him that. I don't know if that means he can't be, but I actually like Marlon Mack because I think that he could be a low-risk, high-reward kind of guy.
Over the Cap projects Marlon Mack at a salary of not even $1 million, so he should come pretty cheap. I'd be willing to overpay.
I think that's wrong, though.
Yeah, I'd be willing to all right, well, let's say, what would you pay for him? $2.5, $3 million?
I was thinking he's at least getting $1 million per year. They have him coming in at 4 years, $2.5 million. I think he's going to be a 2-year, $2 million contract.
I think he's closer to what Matt Breida's value would be, which is about $1.5 million.
Yeah, I think that's more than fair. I'm pretty sure if I was Marlon Mack signing a 1-year deal, I'm not signing anything else, because if that's really my value, I think that I'm being undervalued, and it's because I'm coming off an injured year. So I wouldn't sign anything other than the 1-year contract. But yeah.
All right. Let's get into our initial mock draft. So we've done mock drafts with Pro Football Focus. Austin, you did a couple. I don't know if you want to pick one and talk about it really briefly, but I know that we don't know a ton about these names right now, but just kind of I wanted to get your thoughts on, real quickly, just kind of your mindset going into the draft and what you were thinking.
Sure, I'll talk about them both, but I'm only going to focus on one. And the reason I'm going to talk about both, the second one I'm not going to talk about because the trading system was broken. I just want, I traded pick 87 in the draft for 91 and 98. I also traded the Steelers' first-round pick, 24, and a 2022 7 to the Cleveland Browns in division for 26 and 58. I thought this was ridiculous. I didn't like how that draft went. It did not feel realistic to me. And also, it is at least the first two picks are the same as John. So I'm going to go away from that one to talk about my first one. First one was interesting. There was a trade in it. I got Patrick Surtain the second. He has, obviously there's NFL ties. Patrick Surtain was in the NFL, I think in the early 2000s, and he was a Pro Bowl cornerback, so he has those NFL ties. He's really good. He's not supposed. A lot of people have him going before the Steelers pick, so I took him happily. I do think, as I said, Cameron Sutton and Mike Hilton, I think are going to be gone. I don't think you get either. So with Surtain there, I was literally looking for OT, but when I saw him there, I picked him. After that, we got to pick 56, and I decided to trade back. I accidentally did this trade. I kind of lost this trade, but I took it anyway. I gave 56 and pick 250 to the Cowboys for pick 74 and 99. It was a little farther back. I was still trying to figure out how the trading system worked, and I accidentally pushed that through. I wanted a little bit more from the Cowboys, but it worked out. With pick 74 from the Cowboys, I got Hutchinson, the tackle from BYU. Then with pick 87, I took Brandon Jordan, the tight end from Miami, Florida. 99, also from the Cowboys, I took my center. I took Drake Jackson, the center from Kentucky. 125. Seeing the board, I wasn't very happy with it. I was trying to trade back. There's nothing even interesting there. So I actually double dipped at cornerback. As I said, I think Sutton and Hilton are gone, so I figured 2 cornerbacks wouldn't be a bad thing. So I went for Rodarius Williams, the cornerback from Oklahoma State. At pick 137, 12 picks later, I went Amari Rodgers, a wide receiver from Clemson. I'm hearing a lot of things about him lately, and I didn't know anything about him when I drafted him. But he is actually already being tied to the Steelers as a guy that could be a really solid pick. After then, I was looking at the positions. I was like, I haven't taken a running back, and I would like to take one. I was looking at the board. I was hoping Hawkins would be there at my pick at 204 because there was basically 70 picks before my pick. And I did. Javian Hawkins was there, and I took Javian Hawkins from Louisville. On that, I was just kind of looking at the board, and I saw Demetrius Taylor and edge, because basically at this point I was like, well, I could take anyone I really want. I was like, let me take some edge depth. I took Demetrius Taylor, the edge from Appalachian State. And then I finished the draft by taking a defensive lineman. I took Jonathan Marshall from Arkansas because I felt like he was the best on the board and the most interesting. How did your mock draft go?
So I went into this with an idea that I wanted the Steelers to focus on their offensive line and their rushing attack in this one. So number 24, I had Tevin Jenkins, the Oklahoma State tackle. I took him first. And then at 56 overall, a guy that's been talked about at number 24 for Pittsburgh, Landon Dickerson from Alabama, with an injury history, yes, but a good football player. I have him going in the second round, so 2 immediate upgrades to the offensive line. Then I had a bit of a surprise with my third pick at 87 overall. I went with Tommy Togai from Ohio State. I know that he doesn't really fit the bill in terms of what the Steelers need, but I went with the best player available. I didn't really like what was on the board at that time, and I figured a player that was apparently that good was someone that was too hard to pass up. And with Cam Hayward and Stephon Tuitt getting towards or on the back nines of their careers, I figured that getting a guy that could be a potential long-term replacement for them could help eat into their snaps a little bit so that they're fresher later in the season. I addressed the lack of depth at the edge defender position in the fourth round with a pick of Ronnie Perkins at number 125, or actually I think that might still be the third round. From Oklahoma, I took Talona Hufanga from USC, a safety, with pick number 142. Then I traded the number 137 pick to the Jacksonville Jaguars for the pick number 142 from them, as well as pick number 245, and I also got a 7th round pick in 2022. I then went with running back Chris Rodriguez Jr. from Kentucky, a guy that I'm not sure if he played with Benny Snell or not, but went to the same school. Zach McPherson from Texas Tech, the cornerback, with pick number 223. And then I had three picks in a 10-pick slot here with Micah McFadden, the linebacker from Indiana, Jaquari Robertson, a receiver from Wake Forest, at 245, and then at 250 I took Milton Williams, another defensive lineman from Louisiana Tech. A big focus on the trenches in this game, game of mock drafts here, and I thought I had a decent job as far as my draft went. PFF gave me a B-. I liked the beginning of it, but the middle rounds were kind of a struggle for me. Overall, I like the process, though. I'm looking forward to doing it again once we have a better understanding of these players.
Yeah, just to reaffirm, I literally don't watch college football at all. I was essentially picking names, other than I knew certain had a NFL connection. Other than that, I don't think I know anything about anyone else I picked other than Amari Rodgers. I just was going position and what the board said and what PFF said.
All right. There's a couple big NFL trades that we got to talk about. Which one do you want to talk about first?
Let's talk about the one that happened first.
Alrighty. So that would have been Stafford and Goff. Matthew Stafford, formerly the Detroit Lions, was traded to the Los Angeles Rams for quarterback Jared Goff, a 2022 first-round pick, a 2023 first-round pick, and a 2021 third-round pick, thus setting it up that the Rams will go approximately at least 7 years without a first-round pick if they do not acquire one. What do you think about that for both teams?
Rams are interesting because the Rams have found talent despite trading their picks. Like, they found Cooper Kupp. They were able to sign Robert Woods. It's interesting how they get talent. They're in cap hell. They've put a lot of stuff, and they put a lot into their next 2 years by trading for Stafford. They really think that this is their window, and that's what they're going for. They have an interesting philosophy, and they're the only team that has a philosophy they do. They're really quite bizarre. I was surprised that Stafford pulled so much on the market. I know part of it was getting rid of Jared Goff's bad contract, even that the Lions, but Jared Goff is at least a decent quarterback. He can play. I don't think he's good. I think he's at most average. But I think that for what the Rams gave up, it was probably a little bit too much. I think probably should have erased that third so that the Rams kept it. But honestly, good for them. I would have never guessed Stafford got pulled two first and more.
Sorry about that. I was testing a spinning of the wheel on the website for when we decide which prospect position group we're going to look at first. So I did not know how to shut that down. But in any case, yeah. So I like it a lot from the Lions' perspective. A team that needed to start over, and they've had Stafford for a long time, and unfortunately for them, they've never been able to successfully build around him, despite the fact that he was a really talented quarterback. And new regime, I think it made sense for them to hit the restart button again. And they got a really good haul for Stafford. And on top of that, yeah, I know that Jared Goff probably is not going to be the long-term quarterback there, but you never know if he is. And you've given yourself two additional first-round picks and a third-round pick to basically assist in the rebuilding process. I think it was a fantastic move for them. And for the Rams, obviously it'll be dependent on if they can make a run at the Super Bowl. For years we've heard about the genius of Sean McVay and how he could potentially work wonders with a great quarterback, and he's finally got a really talented quarterback at the helm now. So who has more pressure right now, McVay or Stafford, do you think?
I'd say McVay. I think McVay has the pressure on him that he has to achieve more now that they've given up so much capital that they believe that they can compete with Stafford now. I don't think Stafford has much pressure on him at all, honestly.
I would agree with you. I think you could say maybe there's a little when they get to the playoffs, but I think the big thing to pay attention to is McVay. But yeah, I like it for both teams. I especially like it for the Lions, but I think the Rams will give themselves a good shot here. So, obviously we'll see. But I like it for both teams. And the second big trade, we have Carson Wentz going from the from the Philadelphia Eagles to the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts sent over a 2021 third-round pick and a conditional second-round pick in 2022 that could become a first-round pick if Wentz plays at least 75% of the Colts plays this year, or 70% and the Colts make the playoffs. So the Colts getting their guy, Frank Reich, a guy that oversaw Wentz's best season in the NFL back in 2017. The Colts get a younger version of the guy they were hoping Phillip Rivers could be this year, though coming off a really bad season, and the Eagles are starting over. What do you think about this one?
I love this for both teams. The Eagles had to move on from Wentz. It just had to happen. I think that this was pretty good compensation for a guy that wanted to leave and didn't want to be there and coming off a really bad season. For the Colts, I think this is huge because I think this is a completely different situation. Wentz now has a line. There is an offensive line in with the Colts. I think they just lost Costanzo, but regardless of that, they can afford it. They can build. Wentz probably needs a wide receiver, but they can get him one. They still have even after taking Wentz's contract, the cap hit he gives them is $25 million. They have the fourth most cap space in the NFL. I was telling someone the other day, there's not a fan base I'd be more frustrated to be a fan of than the Indianapolis Colts because they've made the playoffs the past 5 years. Not every year, not consistently, but they have. But they've consistently always had cap space left, and they never spend it. I'd be so mad as a fan if my team had the cap space and didn't try it, and when they were trying to spend it when they were a playoff team, because you don't know what would happen if the Colts could have had someone else. But that's besides the point. They change how they've been because they've been very stingy with their money. They don't like to spend it for whatever reason, and they get a wide receiver for Wentz, maybe a left tackle with the $43 million they have left. They could be competitors. If it's a whole different ballgame now that Wentz might have help. He won't be hit every play. He actually might have wide. You know what? I want to say something though. Regardless, even if the Colts don't pay a wide receiver today, don't draft. They're already in a better position than the wide receivers he had in Philadelphia. Tight end, different story. Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert were very good tight ends. His wide receivers are already better with the Colts, and they're nothing to write home about. There's just Eagles wide receivers were so terrible that I do think that they add there. I think they add there. They re-sign T.Y. Hilton. I don't think they do, but they could re-sign him. Yeah, I think overall this is good for everyone. I think it was good competition for the Eagles. They could end up with a first round pick if all goes well. I like it for both sides. I think the Colts probably I like it a little bit better, but it will have to. You can't really judge a trade by when it happens. You have to see what happens next year.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't like it as much for the Eagles side of it, just because it's a reminder of how horribly they messed up what was a great situation, a Super Bowl winning team just 3 years ago, and how it's been dismantled and so horribly managed. Now they're going to have to eat a lot of dead money from that Carson Wentz contract, but they have an opportunity to bottom out here. I don't know what you think about Jalen Hurts as the potential future of that franchise, but I think that team is going to need all the help from picks they can get, and they got a pretty good haul for a guy that, like you said, wanted out.
Not bad at all.
I thought all this time, I still thought that Wentz was the better option going forward anyways, but it just became clear that he just had no interest in playing there anymore. You see that report that him and Doug Peterson did speak for like 8 weeks?
Yeah, that's wild.
How can
people, it's not just Peterson, though. It's like Alshon Jeffrey really didn't like Carson Wentz, too. A lot of people in the locker room didn't like Wentz.
It's just amazing to me how quickly that thing escalated and got out of control. It could be a while before that team gets things back together.
Yeah, it could be.
But at the very least, they're giving themselves a chance to start anew. And the Colts, like I said, will, like you said, I should say, giving them a chance with their guy now. And you like the prospects of this long term better than when they were signing Phillip Rivers to this deal last year. Wentz is probably not that guy he was in 2017, but I also would be shocked if he's this guy too. He's probably somewhere where he was in 2018 and 2019, which is somewhere between quarterback 9 and 15 or 16. With that Colts roster, I think that they will have a good chance to win playoff games next year.
Yeah, I mean, are they going to use their money? They are one of the few teams this year that can use their money. They could possibly go wild. I can't wait to see what contracts like this year. You might see a lot of guys on 1-year contracts that are relatively cheap, and it could be the Colts could be disgusting next year. They could go sign guys that maybe normally they wouldn't be able to afford. That might get like an extra guy. They could go get Allen Robinson. They could go get really whoever they want, and then maybe more. It depends on how contracts look this year. The Colts spend money. They should be a top team in the NFL. It doesn't even matter how Wentz plays. If Wentz just plays okay, they should be like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
All right, there are some teams that have already made some cap casualty saving cuts due to the uncertain salary cap situation. You wanted to go over some of them?
Sure. So the Packers have cut inside linebacker Christian Kirksey and offensive tackle Rick Wagner. You could see Christian Kirksey returning to the Browns. I would not be surprised. They're very weak at inside linebacker. And that was like a cut just to make space. Ricky Wagner's also a pretty good tackle. The Saints cut guard Nick Eason. The Saints are a team that are in very, very big trouble. They are negative $69 million in cap right now, according to Over the Cap. And they have to figure that out somehow. That is going to be ridiculous. I wouldn't want to be the man doing that. But yeah, Nick Eason is just the beginning for them. I think they're going to be making a lot more cuts soon. The Broncos will reportedly not be picking up Von Miller's option, which is Von Miller, after Peyton left, was basically the face of that team. He's been the defense since he's been drafted. So they're effectively cutting him. They also cut A.J. Boye, which makes sense because that saved them $11 million to cut A.J. Boye. Panthers cut defensive tackle Kawan Short, which they are interested in bringing him back on a cheaper deal, but he's going to test the market first. They cut punter Michael Parladay and Sean Weatherly, which Sean Weatherly made sense. I can't believe he got the contract he did when he did. Falcons cut defensive end Alan Bailey, who I forgot existed. I just remember him as a Kansas City Chief. They also cut quarterback / free safety Ricardo Allen. The Eagles have made a bunch of cuts. The Eagles have cut wide receiver Deshaun Jackson, are expected to cut Alshon Jeffrey and Malik Jackson next. So that's just the beginning of what should be a lot of cuts for NFL teams. And this is what I was saying with like the Colts and stuff. Is like there's going to be guys that don't get as big contracts as you expect this year because because of the COVID and because of the salary cap situation, how it is. But we will have to see.
Indeed, and I think that pretty much wraps things up for this episode, although I will mention to you, Austin, that that sound you heard, I have a random wheel spinner of 4 options, so we could pick the first prospect pool that we're going to pick from between offensive tackle, interior offensive line, tight ends, and running backs.
Very cool.
All right.
Let me know what it lands on.
All right, I don't know if you can hear it, but I'm going to spin it right now.
All right, bet. I'm rooting for running backs.
That would be fun. I would like that. Landed on tight end. So tight end is where we're going to start with, which is not bad.
Oh, I'm looking at Kyle Pitts.
Okay.
I'm looking at Kyle Pitts.
I was going to say who are we going to be who's going to get Kyle Pitts, but I was going to say I feel like I've gotten the top tight end prospects most of the last few years, so I'll
get Devontae Smith.
You've already seen
there when we get to wide receivers.
You've already seen enough from him, have you?
Yes.
My question for you now is: do you want to do a random generator for the mid and low tier so that we have our first 3 scripted out already?
Why not? Let's do, if it's not too long to set it up, let's do mid and low tier.
Okay. You want to filibuster for me for a second while I get it set up?
Yeah, sure. We can filibuster. I kind of want to back and look at some of the other free agents that the Steelers could go after, because you really worked hard on that list, so it'd be a shame to not look at some more prospects. So off this list, other names that kind of pop out. I like Devontae Bosby from Denver. He's a cornerback. And he's one of those guys that actually did make it. He made it back to the NFL, and he also played pretty solid. That'd be a guy I'd be interested in if we can. Another guy I look at, Nate Jerry from or Gary. I actually don't pronounce it.
It's Gary.
I realize I don't. It's Gary. Okay. He from Philadelphia. He actually is pretty solid as well. I feel like he could be a good backup addition there. Honestly, someone I'm looking at, running back wise, Gus Edwards would be nice too. An interdivision move over. I think that he is a really solid player, and he's been sitting in rotation. I think that he could become a lead back as well. Other than that, I think we are ready for the next wheel spin.
All right, so mid-tier, we have cornerback, quarterback, edge, and linebacker. So going for the spin for the mid-tier here.
Open corner.
And it's linebacker. So we're going tight end and then linebacker. And then our final one for the day, we have the low tier, which is going to be either receiver, safety, interior defensive line, or specialist. Here we go.
Open specialist.
Yeah, get that out of the way, right?
Yeah, get it out of the way.
All right, there you go. Specialists.
Let's go.
All right.
So our first 3 episodes are tight end, inside linebacker, and specialist.
All right, and then we'll, once we get through all those, we'll reset as we go. So, all right, now that we've gotten the next 3 mapped out, we'll be back. Next time, we'll be talking about the tight ends ahead of the 2021 NFL Draft. Austin, looking forward to it. And thank you for joining me today as we talk Steelers offseason primer. It was a lot of fun. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, thank you, as always, for listening to the Stronger Than Steel podcast. I apologize today for my voice being a little under the weather here, but thank you for bearing with me. Hopefully it'll be better sometime soon here as we turn our attention to the NFL Draft, a very exciting time. As always, feel free to check out the website for the show, strongerthansteelnfl.blogspot.com. Check us out on social media. We're on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And feel free to email us if you have any questions at strongerthansteelpodcast@gmail.com. Until next time, thank you as always for listening to the Stronger Than Steel podcast. Stay safe out there and have a great night.
Bye.
You have been listening to Stronger Than Steel podcast. Thank you for joining us today, and don't forget to check out our website listed in the description below.